Okay, I'm going to do a little demo on how to do a very quick little landscape in watercolour. First of all, we are going to do a moody sky. So we're going to wet this area, sky area completely. And we're going to use a mixture of ultramarine blue and a little bit of brown just to dirty it up a little bit. Fairly wet. And keep it wet. We're just going to let the paint do its thing. I'm letting the paint actually mix on the palette. I'm using this fairly wet, so I'm using, while this is wet, using my brush to just move the paint around, just using little bits of brown just to mix in with that to give it that greyish look. Okay. Now I'm going to let that dry a little bit, just to before I start using any more. I'll just darken up that side there a little bit. Just want a little bit more on that side and a little bit more on the other side. So I'll just leaving a nice white focused area in the middle. Just darken that up. As you can see, the brown and the blue, if used correctly, will actually mix on the paper. So you get that grey look. That's how you, and the blues that I'm using, my main blue is normally ultramarine and a little bit of burnt sienna. So there you have that. You have a little bit of cloud, a little bit of light here in there. This will dry completely different, so we'll wait for a little while and then we will start on the rest. That's dried a little bit. I just want to add just a touch of pink into this, just as a little bit of interest. Now I know that looks a lot darker than it should, but when it dries, it should dry a lot lighter. So we just move that around a little bit while it's wet. You can do this while it's wet. And now we're going to let that dry almost to the point where the paper looks satiny, not wet. Okay, now we're going to put in some trees on the left hand side. The paper is sufficiently wet enough for the paint to just bleed a little bit, just to give us some nice soft areas. I've mixed the green that I want to use. It's a sap green with ultramarine blue. And I'm just putting that in. I'll just add a little bit of blue to that to darken it up. Trees don't have to be green, so put a little stand of trees there. And just adding in a few darks with the blues just underneath some of those little bunches of trees, and we will let that dry and go on. I'm now going to put in some of the land at the back, and for that I'm going to use a a fairly dark brown. I will just put that in, just touching some of this wet, leaving spaces for a little bit of interest. Right, and now I'm going to tackle some of the water areas using an ultramarine type blue, which is, oh, that's a bit dark. We'll just, very bright colour. Okay. Now, as I said, this is just a quick little demo of what can be done. Here, this is all wet and wet, or dry on wet and then adding wet. I'm going to add a little bit of the darker to the left-hand corner just to hold that corner and unify it. So what I used in the sky, I'm actually going to mix the colour on the palette. I'm just going to, whoops, that's a little bit dark. Let's just lighten that up a bit. But that's all right. We're just going to just uniformly put that in, just to darken it up a little bit and a little bit over the side. We just want to hold the viewer's eye into the painting. Now, here I have a little bit of a bloom. I'm going to rectify that just a little. Now I'm going to let that dry before I can do anything else. The rest of it will be some dry brushing, which I will do later, and then we'll pull the whole thing together. And I'm just keeping that bloom at bay. Okay. This has dried a little bit now, so I'm going to put in some of the rocks, which is a mixture of ultramarine blue and the brown to get a darker brown, because I just I want it to look fairly dark. Then it's just a matter of placing a series of what looks like rocks in the foreground and some over in the background here, over here. Okay. They're actually just marks, really. Just, it's an impression of a rocky shore. Just marks here too. There you go. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to actually use a white. You can use white gouache. I'm using bleed-proof white, but it works just the same. And we're going to put in a few waves. So you need to put quite a lot of this on so that it will work, and it's just quick strokes here and there just to make it look like there's some wave activity here. Sparkles on the water here, and there you go. You have a little bit of a quick seascape. Okay, I'm just going to blend in some of the edges here. I just don't want them too hard. There was a bit of a shadow, hence I'm using the water. Now with a smaller brush, I'm going to start putting in some of the branches for the trees, using that dark brown just to pull them together. Very narrow strokes just to anchor these trees here and here. just little strokes. Let me put another down here. Everything has to connect. There we go. And I'll use a little bit of white, just to put in some of these other ones here. Oops. There we go. That one's a little bit dark. I'll just take that out of it. Right. Okay, I think I'm done. Thank you for watching.